Greetings. A member of the Windermere Community Church in Windermere, Florida, has graciously sent a recording of their Windsong presentation. Reverend Housel will introduce Windsong and the Trusted Allies in honoring the Native culture through the presentation of a Native American flute maker, the builder of an honor arbor, and the presenter for the blanket exercise. Thank you, Reverend Housel and members of Windsong.
Kante, Weste, Nape, Kia Zape, Keystone. I greet you with a warm heart and handshake. Good evening. I'm Reverend David A. Halseal, retired UCC minister and member here at Windermere United Church of Christ in Windermere, Florida. I welcome you to Windermere Church. This church was founded in 1916 by 11 people from diverse denominations who wanted to have a church in Windermere where they could worship. Then in 1961, that congregation became a part of the United Church of Christ. It served for many years downtown in the heart of Windermere, which is a suburb on the west side of Orlando. But then in 2006, the church and its preschool moved to a larger campus on the west side of the town. Since that time, we have been here. Our new pastor, Brad Jagger, has been with us now for 18 months. We are a beautiful mix of people with diverse talents and dreams. And among those is a group called Windsong. And we will tell you more about Windsong in a few moments. But first I want to do what we normally do when Windsong gathers, and that is we always start with some kind of native prayer or prayer circle. And often leading us is Melinda Joy Miller. Melinda Joy is a keeper of the medicine wheel and colors tradition as taught by grandmother Twila Nitch, from the ancient sacred teachings of the Seneca people of New York. Linda Joy, will you lead us now?
So let's take time now to honor the 9 sacred directions. The concept of walking and expressing gratitude for the sacred directions can be included in your daily ritual, during any kind of meditation or prayer time, and certainly with any type of celebration or party that friends and people gather together. I'd like to share some thoughts that define the power of the sacred directions from a Native American, indigenous point of view. Frank Fool's Crow. He was a Lakota Sioux holy man. He was a powerful leader. People loved him all over America. He was a nephew of Black Elk. And he was a healer from the age 5 to when he passed at the age of 99. And this is what he taught. In directions are found everything needed for renewal, physical, the intellectual growth, and harmony. The directions are holy and mysterious beings. Wakantanka remains above them in power, and they're not separated, even though they are distinct and identifiable. The powers do the will of God. Yet they have a will and an intellect of their own. They hear and answer prayers, yet their powers always remain mysterious. The directions have been from the beginning of time, the beginning of the earth, when the earth was being formed. And like a spice in a recipe, they add a flavor to each day. In the morning as the sun rises, take time, that's what I do every day. I express my gratitude to each direction and pull their qualities of wisdom and beauty and power into my life and into the day, throughout the whole day. Wherever I meet, the directions are with me. Thank you. We're going to now talk together, we're going to walk the 9 sacred directions. Thank you, direction of the East, for growth, clarity of vision with all the new beginnings. Thank you to the direction of the South, for love and trust and learning and having skills of communication. Thank you, direction of the West, where we go within, we honor our ancestors and all our relatives, or all those who live in the circle of life on Mother Earth. And we give thanks for helping us to achieve our goals. Thank you to the direction of the North, for wisdom, gratitude, healing, and unity, bringing into oneness. Thank you, the direction of above, where we have sky connections and dream thoughts. Thank you to the direction of below, where we have earth connections. Thank you to the direction of within, for truth. Thank you for the direction of love, for energy. And the 9th, thank you to the direction of peace, for wholeness. Thank you.
When Windsong was first invited to this important event, we were thinking primarily of the blanket exercise. And we will do what we can to share some of what that part of our mission is all about. But as the weeks passed, we thought more and more, and conversations led us more to talk about Windsong itself. Many people have become a part of Windsong. Various individuals, both from within and without, and people without the church, outside the church. And people here tonight, those of us who are assembled, will do what we can to share with you what we are and what we do. Then we'll share a video that has been designed to help us understand more about what Windsong is. But first I want to be clear about the origin Windsong. I've always been an advocate for Native people from the time I was a teenager. Over the years, I've learned about the change of terminology from Indians to Native Americans to Indigenous to more frequently First Nation people. But it's not just been that change of language. It's also been a change, or an evolution, if you would, that has led my heart to seek out other people who share a common interest in those who were here before our ancestors came. For years, I personally practiced a native spiritual path called Vision Quests. It's a 3 or 4 day solitary event where you go away and spend time seeking visions from the Great Spirit. And it was on one of those times that I the Spirit gave to me the preliminary vision of what we now call Windsong. And since that time, the community has grown and continues to grow. And we're at the place most recently where I think we have become trusted allies for Indigenous people here in Florida and beyond. So let us tell you about Windsong, our Tumaba Honor Arbor, our Loot Circle, our commitment to advocacy and environmental justice, and the blanket exercise. Let me introduce now Todd and Eric, who was not only the designer of our arbor, but also the contractor, the builder of it. Todd.
Thank you, David. So David first asked me to consider helping build an arbor and supporting Windsong. He explained it's a flexible place to gather, people to gather for lots of different reasons, including weddings, the blanket ceremonies that we do, any other items that are listed. It's also a natural place where people can be grounded and connected to the energy of the earth. So that's very important to try to keep it natural. So I wasn't quite sure exactly what an arbor looked like, so I did a couple of Google searches and found some examples of Native American arbors. This is one picture that I found. Quite a bit bigger than what we ended up with, but still ours meets the purpose, as you'll see in some of the future slides. So I went about starting and looking at the design. So we can go on to the next slide, please. And picking a location. You can see there's a beautiful tree out there in this open field that we have, and we're going to work together with my son to do all the heavy lifting up early on, getting the heavy timbers in. Kind of felt somewhat like a barn raising type of event. But and then as we continued on, we got more and more help from more people with more cutting of some of the smaller wood. Actually did installing it, the sanding, staining, decorating, and cleaning up the house ourselves. So there really was an opportunity for the community to come together to support the building of the arbor. Next slide, please. So in doing this, my intent was obviously to make something as authentic as possible. But in today's day and age, that we really want our things to be durable and more importantly safe. So we had to take those things into consideration. So I did use pressure treated timbers and stainless steel fasteners and all of that, and we added stain. Not that we needed it for durability, but we wanted to kind of cover up minimize splinters. So again, just things we looked at for safety. We did add these lashings just for effect, to try to give it some look of authenticity. And one from a durability perspective, to say that since we've built it, it's survived 3 hurricanes so far with not much notice at all. So that's going very well. So when we looked at it too, we were looking at it like, well, who can benefit from this, and who else can help us? So here's just a list of folks that could be both benefactors and beneficiaries, and that includes obviously our church members, our preschool, the Windsong community. We have a local Boy Scout troop that meets here at church. There's another institute right next door. The food circle, which you'll hear about, but also all are welcome to partake and enjoy the pleasure of being at the arbor. And then the picture of a recent wedding, and it's really just an honor to have been part of creating such a space that this couple can share such an important day in their life. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Very early in our life together at Windsong, we began to find, some of us began to find an interest in Native music. Probably more had an interest, but didn't become a part of Flute Circle. Some of us older people have arthritis and things like that get in our way. But nonetheless, we have been having a Flute Circle, and early we discovered, within an hour from where we are here in Windermere, up in Leesburg, there is a wonderful flute circle called River Wind Flute Circle. And we're privileged tonight to have the head of that flute circle, Tom Ransom. He and others from River Wind Flute Circle have been inspiring us and teaching those of us who try to learn to play the flute and other instruments. So, Tom, would you share with us now for the next several minutes?
Thank you, David. Yes, my name is Tommy Ben Ransom. Given name, born wife. I have Native American blood in me, I know, because my grandmother was a full-blooded Native American. However, the documentation that was needed to confirm that didn't make it through the fire of the courthouse. And we have not pursued it since then. So I sit here in front of you today not as a representative of any particular tribe or any particular nation of Native Americans. I am a Native American flute maker and a Native American flute player. When I make a Native American flute, we don't call it a Native American flute. It's called a Native American style flute because I do not have association with any tribe. That's a very important distinction. It's actually the law. If a Native American card-carrying, accepted in a tribe, makes an item like a flute or piece of jewelry, it is a Native American item. If people like myself who make items like the Native American flute, we call it in the Native American flute style. So please respect and understand that distinction. Beginning here, I played a nice low A flute. Natives were making flutes for thousands of years. The oldest one in the museum has been carbon dated to 1020, between 1020 and 1160 years old. It was found, unfortunately, it was broken in half. But a lot of makers were able to take very, very good measurements from this flute, and I have heard and seen a replica of it. It plays quite nicely for a 4-hole flute. It's kind of arid. You hear a lot of wind if you hear that. It's called the Breckenridge flute. The natives of the United States or American continent usually used whatever material were local to them that they could easily get a hold of. Most tribes had their own flute makers. They learned the art from the elders. The previous flute maker, for instance, would teach the young man, go out in the forest and find a limb that is about as long as from your finger to your elbow. And that's how they would measure it. Then they would say, take that limb and hollow it out in the center. And then put a hole about 1/2 width, hand's width from the end. And that becomes the sound hole. And then maybe a hand and a thumb Later, you're going to start putting fingers and putting other holes. Some of them would be the size of your knuckle. Some of them would be spaced just by your thumb. So you can imagine that every flute maker in every different village made different sized flutes. Then they would tune the flutes to themselves, tune the flute to itself by enlarging or making the holes a little bit differently. And each flute would be tuned to itself. We call that grandfather tune, but not necessarily tuned to the flutes of the neighboring village. 2 or 3 flutes got together and tried to play together. The best I think I ever heard it described was a cacophony of noise. But that particular practice almost died out. And of course, the biggest reason for that is our federal government wanted it to die out. They did not want the natives to be natives anymore. And they banned the making and the playing of flutes, of rattles, of drums, of dancing. A big, big part of Native Americans is the dance. They banned it, said you can't do that anymore, it's illegal. Fortunately, there were people that didn't pay a whole lot of attention to that, and they continued making flutes. All the way up until about, the 1950s. Dr. Richard Payne decided he wanted to make it one of his life's efforts to learn everything he possibly could about the Native American flute. And he did. When he died, his collection was, bar none, the biggest and best collection in the world. But before he died, he met a gentleman by the name of Alan Graham. We also know him as Coyote Old Man. They got to be good friends, and they got together and said, you know, all these flutes, they don't play so good together. Why don't we change that? And they started a movement where they standardized the tuning to the Native American flute. And all the flutes that you will hear today are now tuned, usually, unless it's grandfather tuned, in the standard pitches of the minor pentatonic scale, something that Coyote actually borrowed from the Japanese shakuhachi. But it's a beautiful, beautiful scale, and the magic of it is that every note in that scale will match every other note in the scale, no matter what order you play them in, or whether you play them together or not. So they standardized that, and now what you'll see is actual concert-tuned Native American flutes that can sit down and play with the orchestra or with any other instrument. So I think I'm probably have extended my talk.
Can you play something?
I will.
Our mission statement states that Windsong was born from a vision to follow Jesus, who said, "Stand up and walk with me." We believe that there's no way that we could do that without paying attention to the environment. We see Jesus as a true environmentalist who consistently considered the lilies of the field, who could see in a fig tree that it was failing to be all that it could be, and who, unlike everyone around him, he could hear the very rocks on which he stood, wanting to cry out. Is our calling, we believe, to be awakened to that same kind of consciousness and to have our brothers and sisters who are native, and also the non-human ones, calling us to take action. So over the years, we've attempted to stand with our indigenous brothers and sisters, engaging in prayer walks when they were doing prayer walks across the Everglades, in opposition to a legislation, when passed eventually, allowed toxic radioactive materials to be used in the repair and construction of highways. We sent emails to a city council who were considering taking native burial mounds and letting a developer take those and develop housing and commercial properties. We urged them to stand with the native representatives and to protect the sacred sites. We believe there's a clear mandate from Creator that we do all that we can do to protect Mother Earth. We consistently discover that our native brothers and sisters always seem to know how to live with the land, not just on it. So we urge each of you to find teachers and partners who will stand with you to do justice for the earth, with our brothers and sisters and all of those who are part of the natural realm, the four-legged, the winged ones, the swimmers, the crawlers, and especially the plants. We invite you also to discover on whose land you sit. For Windsong and Windermere Church, we came to know who the ancient people were who were here long before we arrived. The Timahoa, perhaps the largest nation of tribes in Florida, estimated to be over 200,000 before the Europeans arrived, but are today extinct. Perhaps when you joined and registered for this event, you want to learn more about the blank exercise. For us, this is a very important part of our mission and a gift of the Spirit. I can't prove this story to be true, but I believe it is for me. But several years ago, First Nation elders in Canada in Saskatchewan met with Mennonite farmers who had established farms on their land. They wanted to be clear about all the losses they had experienced and were continuing to experience. And those Mennonites listened. And over the years, as that conversation continued, and more joined in the conversation, eventually the blanket exercise was born. In many, many locations, churches, schools, community centers, eventually a huge crowd of people in front of the Parliament building in Ottawa. It's our hope that as we, Windermere, endeavor to do blanket exercises here in Florida, we want to teach and encourage others to do this in other parts of the country. We hope that that same kind of thing will happen here in the States. That as of this moment, Windsong may be the only ones who are doing it, as far as I know. And we're privileged to have some here tonight. An individual here. Originally was two, but one had to go home. But we are privileged to have Mary Ellen teach us, share with us what she wants to share about the blanket exercise.
To come and stand on a map of Florida, which is approximately 25 by 30 feet, pointing to the map. The map is made up of fabric and blankets arranged in the shapes of the area of the state inhabited at one time by 17 different Native American tribes. From the smallest, which is the Mississippi, to the largest, which is the Tamaqua. As narrators tell the story of the land grab by the government and white settlers, other workers shrink the size of each tribe's area by moving blankets and fabric, eventually taking away almost all of them. This forces the participants to move elsewhere, just as the Native Americans were forced to move to other parts of Florida or to other states. Here's an example of what we tell. With the birth of a new nation, we would hope that the church would play a more gracious role. Yet it was part of the growing empire, and it would become complicit in its colonization. It was not only engaged, it often directed the progress, and benefited from the displacement and forcible relocation of the indigenous people. Some faithful people may have tried to find alternative paths, but the confiscation of land and the near total elimination of all of those cultural and sacred paths of these indigenous people were the pattern. When we look at the U.S., our account is a small reflection of a much larger reality. In 1818, General Andrew Jackson invaded Florida with his forces and had them burn over 100 Mississippi homes. The same year, the three Seminole Wars began, which directed at the remaining indigenous people in Florida. These wars cost over $20 million US, which today is equivalent to $1.2 billion. This caused non-Seminole natives to join with the Seminoles, ultimately resulting in the loss of their land. The Moultrie Creek Treaty of 1823 was signed, which set aside a central part of Florida from Jacksonville to Tampa, approximately 4 million acres. Among 400 indigenous leaders participated, representing many tribes. All of what we know as Central Florida was included, except for 15 miles to the Gulf of Mexico and 20 miles to the Atlantic, which was reserved for settlers. This could have been an extremely huge protection of the land of indigenous people, but it only lasted 9 years. When Andrew Jackson became president, he changed the response to the Indian problem. For President Washington, it was citizen them. For Jackson, it was remove them, which most often meant kill them. Despite resistance from Congress and a decision by the Supreme Court, rendering the indigenous people as a sovereign nations, the Indian Removal Act became law in 1830. The Choctaw in Florida became one of the first tribes forced upon the Trail of Tears, and their land was lost. In 1832, the Payne's Landing Treaty eliminated the Moultrie Treaty and brought in forced removal across the state. The Creek people escaped the Trail of Tears by fleeing south to join the Seminole. Thank you.